It's our big story because we're going to take a closer look at what happened when Democrat Marie Gluesenkamp Perez beat Republican Joe Kent. She did it as a Democrat in a mostly Republican district. And yes, Joe Kent fans, I do hear you saying, hey, the election, it is not officially over. Yeah, but it is essentially over. Gluesenkamp Perez is leading by about 3,000 votes, and she was the one invited to go to orientation for new members of Congress, not Joe Kent. But the fascinating thing is what happened to give her that win and what it could mean for other races nationwide. Here's Evan Watson.
So we got to be grateful.
I met Marvin Ledgy near his house in Ridgefield, Washington, where I asked him about his voting history.
I think of myself as a moderate. I'm a registered Republican, but I don't vote a straight ticket. I look at the candidates and decide which way I'll vote.
Ledgy said he just had one rule for his November ballot.
This year, one thing that was clear was anybody that was supported by Donald Trump, I couldn't vote for, period. It didn't matter who the candidate was against him, what he had to say. If Trump supported him, there was no way I could vote for him.
In Washington's 3rd Congressional District, Republican Joe Kent campaigned on Trump's endorsement. His America First platform often aligned with Trump's and the more extreme ideals of the Republican Party. Democrat Marie Gluesenkamp Perez marketed herself as a more moderate choice, advocating for gun rights and saying Democrats need to better serve rural Americans.
You know, this is a district that believes in moderation, and that's the opportunity here. That's, frankly, what our country needs right now.
The two candidates competed to replace Jamie Herrera Butler, a moderate Republican congresswoman who voted to impeach Trump after the January 6th Capitol riots, but lost in the primary. Ledgy made his mind up early, even though he's typically voted for Republican candidates. He couldn't vote for someone who agreed with Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election results.
Donald Trump liked Joe Kent. Therefore, he's crossed off my list. If he hadn't won the primary, I could have voted for Jamie Herrera Butler. Probably would have.
Yes, Ledgy is just one voter in a district of more than 300,000. But the election results seem to show he's not alone. Just look at Clark County, where nearly 2/3 of all 3rd Congressional District voters live. Gluesenkamp Perez won 55.5% of all votes, an 11-point margin over Kent. But compare that to the race for Senate. Democratic candidate Patty Murray received about 51% of the votes. That implies that 4 to 5% of all voters, likely Republican-minded voters, decided to vote for a Republican for Senate, Tiffany Smiley, but a Democrat in Gluesenkamp Perez for the House. Without those voters choosing a split ticket, Gluesenkamp Perez would not have been elected.
It's kind of a microcosm of what we saw across the country, in that both sides were really animated to turn out, and in the right circumstances, they're willing to cross the aisle to vote for another party.
Chris Stout is an associate professor of political science at Oregon State University. He paid close attention to the congressional races.
Joe Kent was seen as being maybe too extreme, and so Gluesenkamp Perez was able to bring in some moderate Republicans to her side, and that would make a big difference in that district.
Stout says results across the country show that more voters than usual paid attention to ideology rather than political party. He says Washington's 3rd is a clear example of voters wanting a moderate choice, not a partisan one.
And it seems like Americans are starting to react against that and saying, you know, we don't want our candidates, some Democrats too far to the left, Republicans too far to the right. We want someone who's closer to the center. And so I think we'll see kind of a sharp change in the types of candidates put forth, which then is probably good for polarization and the ability for Congress to get things done, because maybe then there's a greater willingness to compromise.
Ledgy says this shift to the middle feels needed, and he believes more voters feel the same.
I think that's realistic. I think the Trump effect is felt.
And we got several emails from you about this race after the race was called for Gluesenkamp Perez, and we wanted to highlight one of them that came in from Michael. He says, there was another reason why Marie won the 3rd district in Wash. She's one of us, say the rural folks of the entire district. The ads she ran establishing her identity were well made and smart. You could almost feel them relate, especially the ones from her car repair shop and the one in which she mentioned Skamania County, gun rights, and her gravel road, water from the well, heat from the fireplace. Most people in Clark or Long Beach have never been in the Green Berets, but a huge amount of people live on gravel roads and heat with wood. Well, what do you think about that? Do you agree or not? Let us know. Send us an email, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. I'm joined now by Evan Watson, our reporter on the story. And Evan, I do think that the professor has a kind of a promising note if the country is kind of coming back to the middle. But what's next for Gluesenkamp?
Yeah, Marie Gluesenkamp Perez is actually coming back from Washington, D.C. next week. She's been there for a week or so now for orientation, kind of this whirlwind tour, if you will. And then after Thanksgiving week, she goes back for a second part of that for even more training, orientation, onboarding type of thing.
Which kind of does give the official stamp that she's going to be the one who wins this, right?
Absolutely, one of those new candidates.
One of the interesting things about these congressional seats is they're always up, it seems. And so have you heard of any moderate Republicans that are getting ready to challenge her in 2 years?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's still early. I haven't heard any kind of challengers at this point. But I will say one person I really wanted to talk to for this story was Carolyn Long. She's ran for this as a Democrat, ran for this Washington's 3rd Congressional District 2 times now, but hasn't been successful. And I was curious to get her take or her perspective on a Democrat winning this seat, went up against a non-moderate candidate, but wasn't able to get in touch with her. We tried a couple of times this week and didn't hear back.
I've interviewed her in the past. She is fascinating. So it's too bad we weren't able to get her.
Maybe in the future.
Yep, let's hope so. Thanks, Evan. Appreciate it.